Go ahead.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of CSUN. Jefferson Denham, Fernando Martinez, and Samantha Garcia. My name is Jefferson Denham. That's your cue.
I am Samantha Garcia.
Right, and today we are in conversation with our guest, Anthony Licata. Anthony, or Tony, you said, right? So I'm going to call you Tony because I can feel the love, even through Zoom. I feel the love here, brother. So Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, so now, of course. So, so to start off, we ask this of all of our guests, what pronouns do you prefer?
My pronouns are he, his, and him.
All right, thank you for that. So, just to let you know, Fernando, Sam, and I are big believers in the idea that our life experiences, well, they certainly influence our art. And we know that you're an artist and a musician. So we are fascinated by life journeys. And so our conversation, Tony, is going to be divided up into 3 parts, okay? Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. Act 1 will be, Act 2 will be middle school through college. And then Act 3 is going to be your performance ensemble or PE experience. So does that sound cool?
Sounds good.
Excellent. I don't know if we're having a bit of a bad connection on my end. I apologize if that's because I'm at a different spot. So if I'm freezing or sounding like Max Headroom and doing a lot of stutter stepping, I apologize. All right.
Oh yeah,
so,
Tony, we'll be patient with each other.
Okay, so Tony.
Yes.
Yes, patience is good. By the way, we're going to start off by wishing you a happy early birthday because November 30th is your birthday, right?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for noticing. Yeah, just a few days. I'll no longer be a teenager.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I know. How about that? So, so let's start with that. You bet, man. So let's start off with that. Act 1. When and where? We know your birthday, but what year? When and where were you born?
So I was actually born in Pasadena at Huntington Hospital on November 30th, 2000. And
Wow.
I was born to a white father and a Peruvian mother. So that's really shaped my whole life experience as well. Being raised in this kind of bilingual, also with my grandparents helped raise me as well on my mom's side. So growing up with that bilingual, biracial environment, also with the support of faith communities, kind of shaped everything that we'll probably be talking about.
Wow,
amazing.
That's fabulous. So so does that mean you were speaking Spanish then in the home right away?
Yeah, a little bit growing up. You know, fortunately we were able to be raised with our grandparents, as I mentioned, so we'd speak Spanish with them every time we see them, and they actually live with us still to this day. My grandpa's actually 95 and my grandma 90, and they're still with us here, living in a little guest house, and so we get to see them every day and spend time with them. So
I love this. Okay, so we're going to get to your school career in a minute, but I have to ask you. So did you take a lot of Spanish courses in like high school and college? And yeah, okay, so I hated people like you because I am not bilingual. And dude, I've been sitting next to someone who grew up like you did, and I'm like, damn you. But did you ace it all, or was it actually harder than you thought?
Well, I think it was very helpful because our knowledge of Spanish was still somewhat limited. I mean, we could understand it better than we could speak it. And so I've heard from a lot of other people, so it really helped with the grammar and other things. And I still need a lot more practice.
Okay.
For sure. But it definitely helped a lot.
Okay, well, now, do you have family in South America still?
We have some relatives there. I have an older cousin who lives there, but a lot of them have actually moved over here. We have one family in South Carolina, and then we get to see, well, obviously not during this time, but normally we'd get to see our other uncles and aunts who live like by the Chino, Ontario area.
Wow. All right. Well, shout out to them. They'll probably be watching this. Now, so you gave us a glimpse of you growing up. Um, Now, and you told us a little bit about your parents. What was your personal relationship like with them?
Well, this is really strange because I just feel so blessed and grateful because it's just, I don't see too often, but I'm just really grateful to have such incredible and supportive parents from the very beginning. And just having also a really good relationship with my brother too. We're extremely close, never fighting or anything. And so it's just, it still to this day amazes me how, I was able to not raised, being spoiled or so the teaching me to earn things from very little, from very young, but also being supportive and loving. And um, yeah, I think it's just probably just comes from where they came from and their life experiences, how they grew up. And also I mentioned the kind of principles that we abide by of just trying to, help others and focus less on, ourselves. And I think that attitude of service and helping others really crept into all the different, all the parenting and everything. So
Wow.
I'm just very grateful for all that.
Don't you know you're supposed to suffer for your art? Dang. And you're talented. And you're so talented. I mean, we've been watching some of your music and you're bursting all of my preconceived notions in a good way. All right. Now, you mentioned your brother. His name is Jimmy, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so he's a little bit older than you. And you guys, so no conflict at all? He's an older brother. He didn't try to put you in your place ever?
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, I mean, what's been fortunate is our parents have really taught us the tools, how to like discuss, which is what we call like consultation, where you have to put your ego aside and you have to see what's best, looking for the truth. And we especially find that in our music. We each have our own strengths and weaknesses, and we really just put them together and complement and through just trying to find what's best for the song or what's best for the message. We eventually come to the conclusion, and with a lot of patience as well. Some of these songs take, years and years to write of just revising and revising and revising. And so it really takes patience and dedication.
And Tony, I bet Fernando and Sam might have something to say about this either now or later when we get to PE, but the idea of creativity and then the give and take, understanding the give and take of that and the fact that you could experience that early on with your brother, I think that's huge. And so what do you guys think? I think that's pretty amazing.
I think that it's just really beautiful, everything you say about your family and your relationship. I just think that your parents really did a great job just giving you and your brother the tools of communication, and just putting the ego aside is one of the most important things. And a lot of people don't learn that from a young age like you did, which is so important for the rest of your life. So some people find it early and some people find it way later, but it's a lot. You get into like a happier flow creative state the earlier on you put your ego aside. So I just really think that's so amazing. I could talk forever about that, but it's really great to hear somebody in such close proximity having such a foundation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and I think
one thing I was going to say, Fernando, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
yeah, it's just like I mean, it's sort of a caveat, I guess. It's just sort of thinking about that relationship and how you carry that with you, and then seeing how that affects the way that you've been, I guess, performing or being creative with PE now. Since you've had this since you were a child, and here you are with a bunch of other adults who are trying to create a performance, or to seeing how that translates over. It's going to be interesting once we get into that, like you said, JD.
Yeah. And by the way, dear listeners, dear viewers, you'll hear every once in a while, there is no cat. We're just kind of piping in cat noises just to keep you on your toes. There is no cat.
No
right,
cat.
Fernando? You don't have a cat there that's mewing at you right this second. Right.
You didn't see her 10 minutes ago hop in and out of the frame. You didn't
see
that.
Nothing. Okay. So Tony, and you can tell me if this is off limits too, but because whenever you want to talk about religion, sometimes it gets a little funky. But I noticed with your music that you give a shout out to the Baha'i faith. I think that there's even songs based on a lot of the principles of the Baha'i faith.
Correct.
Is that a foundational element with you as well?
Yeah, and that's actually what I mentioned, where those tools of consultation and all focus on values and service. That's really where it comes from. Our parents, they grew up. My dad grew up in Chicago and my mom in Peru. And actually, when they came to, well, actually, my mom had neighbors who were Baha'is, and my dad actually grew up a few blocks from the Temple for North America over there, where they have a space for people from all religions to come and pray. And coincidentally enough, when they came to California was where they actually got acquainted with Baha'is and got involved in the activities and such. And that's where all these tools that I mentioned, they kind of help teach us as well. So the idea of service and consultation and, standing up for, these kind of principles and ideals that are universal in all religions and all different cultures. And so that's really the foundational aspect that really informs really my daily life.
Yes, Sam.
I'm so very interested. I've never heard of the Baha'i faith. Would you just give me like a tiny, maybe just like what it's all about?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds very spiritual. It sounds a lot like it aligns a lot with what I believe in. So I'm very curious to see.
Yeah. Well, as always, it's hard to sum up a whole world religion, and of course, different things to different people. But overall, the social principles revolve around the oneness of mankind, and that mankind is at the point now where world peace is not only achievable but kind of inevitable. And so, like how things are going, we're either going to have to get rid of old ways and learn new ways of living. And so this means that we all have to work together. So things like the equality of men and women, the harmony of science and religion.
Do you guys study the law of one, if you've heard of it?
Oh, what exactly is the law of one? That I'm guessing the whole premise is mankind, so I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we can. I could go on for days, so maybe we can connect another time on that. But yeah, we'll connect another time so we can get more onto your story.
All right, for sure.
But thank you for sharing.
And
thank you so much.
And I'm not so surprised, Fernando, or you, to hear Tony talking about this, because it seems like if you have the spark of artistry within you, it does open you up to things, and it makes you want to aspire for your best self, I think. And so it's cool, Tony, to hear how that's having its impact on you. I should tell you, by the way, I'm from Chicago as well. And because my connection is not 100% great, I don't know if you said this already, but the Baha'i Faith Temple there, did your dad used to go to that?
Yeah, he actually grew up a few blocks from it, didn't know much about the faith. I think as a kid, they would kind of like have snowball fights or whatever around that area, not knowing what the significance of it. But yeah.
It's a beautiful building. Oh my gosh. All right, well, I already like your dad. He's from Chicago like me. All right, so let's segue out.
We're losing you, Jeff.
Your childhood interacting in school, camping. All right, so we're going to segue into your school career, which is still in Pasadena, right?
Yes, yeah. This is my final year at CSUN.
Right, but when you started, when you were just a wee lad, what elementary school did you go to?
Actually, yeah, my whole life, at least in 6 months, I've actually grown up in Arcadia, California. So this has been my home. This is, all I know. So I've been very fortunate all through the public school system, Highland Oaks, Foothills, and then Arcadia High. And then I went to PCC. I started taking PCC classes while I was in high school. So I went to PCC, Pasadena City College, 1 year full-time, and then I transferred over to CSUN.
I'm so glad that you explained that, because as I mentioned to you, I stalk you. I stalk all our guests to try to figure out who you are. And you have a LinkedIn profile, which is pretty sparse, friend. but it does talk about the fact that you were at PCC, Pasadena City College. And I was counting up the numbers. Now, I'm not great at math, but I counted it was more than 2 years, and now you just explained why. Thank you for that. I wouldn't have been able to go to bed and slept well otherwise. What what do you remember about being a kid? Now, your profile, your website, I should say, and we should share that at the end of our show for your band, but it says that you and your brother were making music just at a very, very early age, right?
Yeah, more or less. We started off mostly doing covers. And that's how we learned a lot of what we learned about songwriting and performance.
Right.
We started actually, in 2010. We started at an open mic in Altadena, the Coffee Gallery front stage. They had an open mic there. And there we just found an incredibly supportive community of local adult musicians who became mentors and gave us opportunities to perform and introduced us to new kinds of music and advice about all the industry and everything. So we were just very fortunate. And coming in at an early age was very, very interesting because we were able to absorb a lot. But it was still good because we were able to just be exposed to different opportunities, and we weren't treated as kids. We weren't treated as like just, a novelty act or whatever, even though, we weren't very trained in any respects. They still treated us as adults and taught us and were patient with us and, helped mentor us all the way.
Wow, that's beautiful. Now, hold on. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
How about now? Okay. Sorry about that. I think everybody and their brother is Zooming today. All right. So what I was going to ask was, when you were young, did you know what you wanted to do? Did you know what you wanted to be? Was it a musician or was it something else?
Yeah, so this probably came around third grade or so. We'd always loved music. Our parents played classical music when we were babies, and I've always loved singing. They say like when I think it was like 6 months, I started singing along, like they were playing like a Peruvian like traditional music, and I'd just be like ay 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 as a baby in the very beginning.
What? That's crazy.
But we didn't really receive formal training till I think I was about 6. I took piano for a year. My brother was 8. He took violin for a year. And basically my parents told us that basically try music for a year. If you don't like it, then, you can do something else, but at least try it and commit to it for a full year. And so that kind of sparked our interest. My brother got into classical music. And then my dad started taking guitar lessons, which encouraged him to take guitar lessons. And then from there, the space for the open mic kind of helped guide us to, the music that we loved, which was classic rock. So we grew up on, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, and the Beatles. And so we would basically just go to this open mic every weekend, pretty much Fridays and Sundays, and just, sing whatever song we could learn. And
Wow.
So there we eventually learned, kind of like, how do you interact with an audience? How do you make a set list? How do you make sure that keep them engaged and all that stuff?
So I have a question then. When you were in middle school, when most of us were going through a very awkward stage, you were becoming quite the chick magnet, right? Because you were a musician.
No, not really. I will say middle school is very important. Was very important time for me. And they'll probably go along with some of the things that have really inspired my music. I'm sure like other people, it is kind of a more awkward phase. For me, it was more me just trying to find a path. I know, in the Baha'i faith, there's a lot of emphasis placed on these middle school years because it really is when you start questioning things. And that's one of the other main principles is the independent investigation of truth. There's no clergy in the Baha'i faith, so we all have to find our own path. And this generally starts around that time. And that's where I was. We would go to interfaith events. And the whole point of Baha'i faith is you have to think for yourself and not just let other people tell you what to do. So I was listening to different religions and finding the commonality you know, as we were performing at these interfaith events, you know, being able, we actually had a kind of a youth classic rock garage band type thing with our friends. So that was fun, you know, being able to play with full band and finding different opportunities to play at restaurants. So, you know, like things like managing relationships in that sense, and then also at school. But I will say, it was definitely during that time where I started to feel a little bit more isolated in my beliefs, because, you know, I maybe will mention later about what my favorite book is, but it kind of goes along with that idea that, you know, I was kind of really fed up with all like the materialism and trying to fit in and all that. That was very huge, especially where I grew up in Arcadia. It's a fairly affluent, you know, neighborhood. And so there's a lot of emphasis placed and pressure on grades, trying to fit in, you know. And the thing is, like, I knew, like, oh, if I just like cut my hair, because that's when I also started to grow out my hair, so I didn't look like your typical, you know, person who'd fit in. If I just cut my hair, hang out with these people, and did all this, you know, I could maybe fit in. But I realized, like, you know, that's not going to make me happy. I'd rather be with my friends and, you know, stick to, you know, these non-materialistic point of view.
Well, I know Sam had alluded to this, the fact that you kind of were coming to these realizations at a young age, and many times it takes a lifetime to finally go, hey, what I've been chasing is not worth it. That's not where I'm going to find love and happiness. So the fact that you're able to see these things is amazing. Did you feel then in the high school years, did you feel like your core person had already been shaped and formed?
Yeah, so it's a little complicated in that middle school there's still kind of, it's just there's so much, like, there's a lot of pressure and stuff, as I mentioned, trying to fit in and all that stuff. So it's kind of like this kind of cognitive dissonance constantly. And so in that, what I call, like, in middle school is kind of like my Holden Caulfield phase. And that kind of also led into high school as well, you know, not feeling motivated at times, going into places where basically what I've kind of attributed it to is mostly my doing of trying to set myself to too high of expectations. And that really took a toll on my self-esteem and everything, never feeling like I was good enough, you know, that I'm not the best person, like, oh, you know, I'm too impatient, I'm not as good as I want to be. So that definitely contributed into kind of like a lack of motivation and frustration with myself. Again, with our music, we were still struggling with, you know, bad vocal habits, you know, kind of that frustration. You know, I know how I want to be of service and make it sound as, you know, good as I can, but not quite able to get there. So all those emotions and issues definitely crept in high school, and even in the past year or so, definitely like struggling with all that. But it's I'd say in the past year or so, it's gotten a lot better of me just trying to, you know, not beat myself up all the time.
As an artist or as an artistic person, for our audience, I think that we're all kind of relieved and we all nod in knowing how this feels, where you haven't, we were just joking about this a little bit. You're never arrived. You're always arriving, right? You're always incorporating. Am I okay, or did I freeze?
You're good. A little choppy, but you were good.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah.
Understood.
Oh my gosh, so frustrating. All right. Well, anyway, so here you are in high school, and you're experiencing the ups and downs and the roller coaster of normal life. Anyway, I love your answer. It just feels so honest, and I think so many of us can relate to that. Now, so you're still grappling with what do I, you know, your identity a bit, like who am I in this Arcadia realm? Am I going to try to fit in? Do I buck the trends? Blah, blah, blah. And then you started going to college. So how did you decide that college was going to be an option for you?
Well, fortunately, I had my older brother who started taking Pasadena City College classes while he was in high school. So I started that my sophomore year of high school. And I just found, like, you know, these classes are much more interesting and in many ways less work than the demanding workload of high school. because like some of these, it's kind of, based on like discussion and reading. It's not, like memorize these facts and like take this really hard test that's trying to trick you, as it was in some of my classes in high school, which were actually quite challenging. Um, fortunately, I'd had tutoring before, so I was fairly proficient in math, but I was really struggling with just some of the workload in high school. So being able to start taking Pasadena City College classes really helped, form my perspective and education. And, this is kind of more of the route I want to go. I can't be an engineer or, have to take calculus and all that. Pre-calculus was enough for me. So it definitely, taking those Pasadena City College classes really helped me understand the value of education. It's not just about regurgitating facts, but, more regarding to the critical thinking aspect and also applying it to your daily lives and applying it to your music as well. So, taking a class like Music Cultures of the World or the History of Rock and Roll and seeing all the different aspects of how really the whole entertainment industry is based on, white people, taking Black culture and how that race element plays a very important part in all aspects of society, music being one. And that being another thing that's also really emphasized in the faith is, again, with the oneness of humanity. This was also the time, going to college where I became more aware about the racial justice issue. I remember in high school, me telling my friends, this is not right, with police brutality and all that. And a lot of the mindset of some young people today is like, oh, what can you do about it? Like, oh, it's not that bad. What's the point in wanting to change anything? So going to college and, taking classes in ethnic studies and, again, exploring more with my faith. There's actual guidance in the faith from one of the leaders in the 40s who basically wrote a letter to the U.S. talking about this issue, saying what white people need to do to be sure to include and empower and, treat as human beings all the different races. So I mentioned this in this area because that's really related to the kind of college side of, the more intellectual and more socially active parts of my psyche. Mm-hmm.
And I know that you and your brother have incorporated this idea in one of your latest releases, right? You guys just released a song. Was it what is the title?
Yeah, Knock Down the Door, from our last album.
That one. And so, dear listeners and audience, make sure you check that out on YouTube. But yeah, it's cool to see. And I think that when we get to Performance Ensemble, I want to ask how you feel that also takes on the social issues of the day in an artistic way, which I think is profound. But before we get there, and hopefully I don't sound choppy when I say this. You still?
Wait for it. Now.
Okay. How about now? We good?
Now, Jeff, before it goes away.
Okay, here we go. Love and romance, my friend. When did you first fall in love?
Well, I will say, I've kind of always embodied that kind of, that kind of Tom Sawyer, dreamer, romantic type of thing in my head, at least. Kind of, I'm sure this is common with musicians, that kind of aspiring person. And, so I was, as a young kid in elementary school, I didn't mention it, but I had many girlfriends as like elementary school level. I guess I didn't really care too much about self-esteem. I just, I think it was like in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade. And just that was just kind of the approach. And there also comes, downsides to that because, with the media and everything, they teach you that, this romantic love is going to like solve, again, with money, or this romantic love is going to kind of solve that kind of void that people feel that want to fill. Instead of filling it with spirituality, they fill it with these materialism things. And so that's something I kind of had to learn as I got into, at the end of elementary school and then into middle school. I did have a relationship in middle school. And since it was more complicated with all these different forces, that also brought on things that also made me realize that, okay, I need to understand all the different aspects of what does love and romance what should it really mean? Because society, especially geared towards that demographic, all the songs are really geared towards kind of the physical aspect, and all that. So just trying to steer away from that was really important for me to realize that, when it comes to that kind of things, you want to find someone who not only you can trust, but who helps you grow. I think that's the most important thing. That if our purpose in life is, to grow spiritually, to have a partner is just another aspect of where you can grow and you can also help the other person grow. So it's just that kind of thing. And just having that be the center of everything in my life is what I'm striving to do. And, all the other things will fall into place if that's the foundation.
Well, Tony, this sounds very wise. This is the almost 20-year-old you. But I'm talking about high school you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these are all things that you've been able to process and look back on. But at the time, you were, fumbling around like the rest of us, right? Please don't tell me you were this wise in high school.
No, well, high school, yeah, no, yeah. As I mentioned before, all the things from middle school, all the self-esteem and trying to fit in. High school, definitely, yeah, I would. Definitely, as I mentioned, there was a lack of motivation and a kind of, that's also when I started having health issues that I'm still dealing with right now. That actually, made me have to start school online a few months even before the lockdown. So again, just this kind of, it created this kind of attitude of just, being tired all the time, developing some, scoliosis and other things. So I definitely was struggling, and I'm still struggling with all that, and definitely fitting in that love romance definitely was a major theme of what I was trying to struggle with, in high school, not having a girlfriend or anything the whole time, and not seeing like a viable option for anybody else, all that things. But in the end, it takes a lot of just like, took a lot of time, and still dealing with it now, realizing that, the looks, it's just the looks don't matter, and, all that thing. It's easier. Even if I had these ideas in my head, it was hard to apply them as much because it's just, you're constantly bombarded 24/7, especially in middle school and high school, with all these kind of like, fake principles, for lack of a better term.
I love what you just said, because Sam and Fernando and I have talked about how by the time you get to college, you have to challenge and realize, I should put it this way, that the ideas that you've been given may not be yours.
Mm-hmm.
So you test them with evidence for yourself to find your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you are willing to go there. And that takes a little bit of courage to get there. So now you've discovered college, and now you're kind of finding that you love the side of college that is opening you up to different perspectives. So what made you decide then from Pasadena City College to go to Northridge?
Yeah, so then again, I was very fortunate to have my brother a step ahead of me. He went to Pasadena City College in communication studies, but he took some music classes there as well, and he was able to do a degree in music industry studies at CSUN. So he really loved it. He was learning about the industry, the business side of it, as well as some other technical aspects. And so I always found Northridge to be a very great option. I've heard great things. My brother loved it. Also a lot cheaper than the other schools. Like in theory, with PCC, they have a good reputation, and I was in honors and everything. I could have, tried to apply for, UCLA and other things. I had good enough grades and stuff. But I realized, CSUN it seemed a lot more practical. The education seemed really good. The teachers seemed like they really knew what they were talking about. And you could really work in the field. That's what we really liked in the industry. It's so close to everything, and there's a lot of connections there. So I decided to do communication studies as a way to kind of just complement what my brother was learning, because I didn't want to just learn the exact same thing as him, because he's going to teach me it anyways. So I might as well learn something that can kind of complement it and kind of help with, you know, the public speaking aspect, and just a lot of the theoretical concepts in communication studies are still applicable in, say, like songwriting and you know, group management. Our eventual goal is to, you know, create our own record label where we can produce other artists as well. And my brother just finished a certificate in audio engineering, so he's already starting to produce an EP for one of our friends and stuff. So it's just, this all kind of comes together, and I'm trying to find ways that I can apply, you know, all these concepts that we're learning with that.
How cool, right? How cool is it to have a partner where you can say, okay, you're going to learn that side, great, I'll learn this side. And I was going to ask you point blank why you didn't focus on music or get your degree in music, but I can see, pardon me, the way you articulated your answer, why it was a very wise move that you guys both did. So that's awesome. Now, before we get to performance ensemble and what got you there, I do want to just spend a minute or so with your musical career with your brother. I know that recently you had I think this was like a week ago, you played a gig, online gig at Urban Homestead, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So how have you as a musician translated I mean, that's one way, obviously. How have you dealt with the challenges of COVID and your music?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We definitely, this time is for everyone was just a time to step back, you know, not be so caught up and busy with everything, and just really focus on what matters, such as like family and also social justice issues. And so it was a really good time where we were to focus more on, you know, our music, a lot more songwriting. The year before, we'd started really focusing on, you know, the writing lyrics and really getting in there, putting in those hours of, you know, writing a song every night, you know, even if it's just the lyrics. And so by the time that, you know, the shutdown came, we're prepared to really just take that time and really focus on the music and arrangement of this next album that we'll be releasing next year. We were able to go in the studio and record our parts safely, you know, and we've been doing some live stream shows as well, and we've gotten good feedback on that, because I feel like music is a really good thing for people during these times. It can be very healing, especially with isolation and all those issues that are happening. But yeah, I feel like it was just more of a time for us to reflect and really have the time to focus on our music, because before we really were quite busy. For the past 10 years, you know, it's either performing at either like a Baha'i event or other thing event, you know, going to tutoring. We did karate for like 7.5 years when we were younger as well. So that was like twice a week, and then having math tutoring and then creative writing tutoring, being involved in volunteering events through the Baha'i faith. It was like literally every week nonstop. So when COVID came, it was definitely a lot more time to just focus on the music, put in that, you know, effort, and really try to accumulate, you know, those kind of 10,000 hours that we're trying to do over the past 10 years.
Well, you know, it's funny what you just said, because Fernando and Sam and I have thought about this too, that with COVID shutting everything down, it forces you to face yourself, to face a lot of things that if you're just, we can all busy ourselves to keep ourselves distracted. But what you've said, Tony, is like, you've taken this time to really say, okay, who are we? Who am I? How can I still get better at my art and my craft? And before, okay, I said this already, but I'm going to say it one more time. Before we get to PE, I did want to touch on the fact that you went, when you were at PCC, Pasadena City College, you studied abroad.
Yeah.
And you went to Costa Rica, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So going there, I know that you had said in that concert that I just referred to a little bit earlier, that you used to go to karaoke nights or open mic nights, I guess is what it was. And so even studying abroad, like how did that broaden you as a person and you as an artist?
Yeah, well, I'd say going to Costa Rica was really life changing and turning point for me and my artistry and everything. And it was after that that I became more inspired. I was able to focus a lot more on songwriting. It's really just because it was really for the first time I was able to really have kind of real independence and freedom. I didn't have to answer to my parents or anything. I was able to prove that I could be responsible. I was able to prove that I could still be independent and have as much freedom as unlimited freedom. We were able to finish a lot of the work before we actually went over there. So the whole time we were there, it was going zip lining, it was going into nature, which I personally love and find very healing, just being surrounded by all the trees and everything. It was just really incredible, and really it was very freeing. And one reason why it was so impactful is because the moment I came back, it was really stark, big culture shock, everything. It went, because I went from like having absolute freedom, then coming back, having all these responsibilities, all these pressures, naturally wanting to spend time with my friends and everything, grappling with all these things. So that definitely, last year was definitely very difficult for me, because I went from, having all this, independence and being able to, relax, and then to coming back with everything, having a big workload, and then with all this stuff. So that kind of experience kind of shaped the rest of all this things, where I mentioned in the past year, I've kind of been grappling with all the things about, finding my own path, finding a balance between, personal freedom and also, the obligations you have to like your parents, to your family, and to balancing all the different aspects, what we call in the faith, living a coherent life, a spiritually coherent life, balancing all the different aspects.
I love that you said last year, you're going to laugh maybe, but let me explain myself. I love that you said last year was difficult. Here's why. I think so much of our artistry is born out of difficulty.
Yes.
and struggle. And that is one of the things that I feel is so powerful about performance ensemble. And so we're going to get to that right now. And so we're going to call this Act 3 Performance Ensemble. So now you're a senior this year, is that correct?
Correct.
Is this your first semester in performance ensemble?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so how, and I'm going to let Sam and Fernando, because they have a lot more experience in this than I do, actually. But how did you become aware of performance ensemble in the first place?
Well, actually, the idea I'd heard about it fairly early on, and the idea was kind of always interesting to me. My first semester there last year, in the was the fall? Yeah, in the fall, I'd attended the performance ensemble. They had like a open mic type of thing. And so I just attended and watched, and I just like, oh, this seems like a really supportive community, people from different walks of life who are here to support each other and talk about and perform about meaningful things. So that really appealed to me. And then, the next semester, there's shutdown and everything, and I had to also go online before then because of the health problems. So, so I just decided, yeah, when I have the time, I might as well do it, which is why I started this semester. And I've been very fortunate. It's really put a lot of things in perspective, and really helped us a lot with our music as well.
Wow. So when you first got involved, I mean, did you think, what did you think of it at first? You said it seems like a supportive community, but I know, I'll speak for myself, when I first got involved, and I was in theater, but it just felt cool and wacky.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Did you experience something similar?
Well, I also did theater. I one of my big passions is theater as well. I did theater in high school, and that's, again, in middle school, low middle school and high school, I did theater, and I was really I've always loved, musical theater than just theater in general. So that always strikes a chord with me, and try to incorporating that in our performances with music as well. So I definitely, it felt like I was going into the theater room at my high school, you know, like people who are, surrounded by this kind of self-expression that's, unrelenting and accepting and inviting. That's always appealed with me. I've always, um, been in tune with that kind of attitude towards art.
That's really cool. And of course, it's not exactly like high school because you're not performing in front of an audience. You're performing in front of a camera, part of performance ensemble online. And I know Fernando had experience. Fernando, you did a show like that already, right?
Um, as a student,
Not as a student.
No. But when you were directing or
um,
co-directing.
it's not. I don't know. I don't think so. No, right now.
Mm-mm.
Oh, so what do you know?
That's the
Okay.
thing. I think because I was just heavily involved with them after the whole transition to online, that it makes it seem like I was, but I wasn't. So it's interesting to me. It's like I don't know anything, but it feels like I do. You know?
See, Tony, Fernando just is a presence. And so I just assume he's involved with anything. But what I'm going to say is for Fernando and Sam, because you've experienced and I have too, performance ensemble in front of a live audience. What questions might you have for Tony as far as like this process that he's doing now with this show that they're creating?
Yeah. You don't mind if I have one quick question and then we can hand it over to Sam, but
Go ahead, Fernando. I got nothing right now.
all right. Because we were talking a lot about, and it's just like within the last 5 minutes of like culture shock, right? When you came back from Costa Rica and suddenly you don't have the freedoms that you had over there, and Jefferson just asked you what it was like, sort of stepping into this virtual classroom for the first time, and how, was there something that you had to learn or unlearn or relearn, because it sort of seems like your life has been going in this very particular direction, right? It's sort of spearheaded by music and your faith and your spirituality, and then suddenly it just sort of seems like you're here all of a sudden, and like it's PE. Like, did you have to learn, unlearn, relearn anything when you sort of made that decision to join PE?
Yeah, for sure. This is something I've noticed a lot in just life in general. Like I grew up with these principles and ideals, but generally I come across things that help reaffirm these principles on how to apply them. So I think a performance ensemble is a very key thing. Like I've always been trying to be aware of, for example, not appropriating the cultures of others, especially coming from, where I've come and the advantages society's given me just because of the color of my skin. Understanding that, and performance ensemble really helped me put that into focus. I've always had an idea, like obviously, I should not do this, but how exactly, what are like the exact ways that I can be sure to avoid it? And this is exactly the process that happened. That was very opened my mind in performance ensemble, because my original piece was actually me being inspired by, the civil rights movement and how music and gospel music particularly has been used as a way to really inspire and offer hope to communities of color. And talking with some of the other students, we were able to come to the realization that how it was performed, while the intentions were good, I was open to not even like singing, the spirituals and such, but just it's not so much that it was bad or anything, but the intentions was there. It was just more, I wasn't really speaking from my own experience, and I wasn't really contributing my own voice. So part of meeting the movement, as we've been talking about, is drawing from your own experience and your own voice. And I've noticed that in songwriting as well, not trying to per se take on the voice of an experience that you don't know, but also coming from a perspective where you still address the reality of other experiences from where you come from. So I know as an actor, I'm always trying to be, empathetic and try to think from other people's perspectives. but that can always have a negative effect where it almost comes where like you're trying to speak on behalf of other people, which we've been really trying to be very diligent about avoiding. And so instead of, we basically just scrapped that original idea, and we basically just used some footage from the studio, as you'll see in the ensemble, for one of our songs in which we talk about racial justice. And it went, you know, the lyrics had many revisions from the beginning. It was kind of more like just us talking about racial justice and such, but it went from us trying to be like we're affected by it directly in this way to more like we're observing what's happening and we're standing in solidarity and meeting the movement from where we come from. And so we felt that that's it's always a good approach if you come from your experience and understanding. Yeah, it's just it's something that we're still trying to find, you know, the details of like how exactly should you meet the movement.
And I know Sam is going to contribute some comments right now, but before we do, I just got to stop and say, look at Tony's lighting. He's so badass artist lighting.
Oh yeah, that's an album cover right there.
That is an album cover, brah. So Sam, go ahead if you have anything you want to add.
I wanted to ask Tony, since Jeff, you did just mention that we haven't experienced the online version of Performance Ensemble. So I wanted to ask, because based on the three of our experiences in Performance Ensemble, because of our physical closeness, and because of, you know, literally because of the exercises that we did, we were literally like playing Twister in different forms, you know, trying to, you know, get comfortable. And that was kind of like what played into like the dynamic of our performance and made it so strong, because this physical trust that we have built together. And so I wanted to ask, you know, coming in with fresh eyes and a fresh mind and perspective to the class, but in a completely different format, is there a closeness type of family environment that we went through that is cultivated even though you're not meeting in person? I wanted to know.
I definitely think so. I definitely felt that kind of energy and environment, even though it was online. I mean, I'm sure obviously nothing beats, you know, in-person interaction. But I think that another thing that the shutdown has taught us is that there are avenues too as well where, you know, online can in some ways be, very different, but it could also be helpful, and we shouldn't neglect it, for sure. Obviously, for something like Performance Ensemble, something in person is probably always going to be, you know, much more preferable.
Maybe, who knows? With the, you know, we're in unprecedented times, and last week I think we talked about the evolution of Performance Ensemble, just like the evolution of anything, and how I really think it's evolving into something that that gives so much more even creative freedom. And I feel like the more creative freedom you have, the more potential there is to create that same connection, visceral or not. You know, you can still cultivate that with, you know, the amount of creativity that's available. So I think that's really awesome how each and every one of you that's come in has talked about how you know, it could, you know, they're like, it could have been better in person. I'm sure nothing beats it, but you know what if something does beat it? You know, what if it's meant to just evolve and like just keep on evolving and see where technology may take us, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for sharing. I definitely feel that there's a lot of creative freedom for sure doing it remotely, and just, you know, utilizing.
I bet, especially if you're doing music, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's one thing that Tony, Sam, and I have talked about too, that, and Fernando, we talked about how creativity can manifest itself in more ways than one. And so if we were beholden to just one way of doing Performance Ensemble, we'd miss out on all the other opportunities, to Sam's point, of how you can incorporate, even with the struggles. Once again, you know, we talked earlier about how struggles can really bear fruit as far as creativity is concerned. So good on you guys. And we're going to want to hear a little bit more, because I know the show's next week, right?
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, well, let me ask you this. because we recognize that not everybody who watches is part of performance ensemble. So is there anything that you would say to someone who is curious about performance ensemble, and maybe even help them, if they're curious and interested, help them even consider it seriously to be part of it?
Well, for sure, I definitely highly recommend for anyone. First of all, like, it doesn't matter where you come from, what degree or anything, or what your interests are. It's just it's one of those things that is just kind of like, you know, therapeutic for regardless of where you come from. Performance is really, it may seem not as emphasized as much in society, you know, the kind of idea of like artistic performance. I mean, of course, with TV shows and film, but this kind of performance is very different, in a way, in that it's really about expression, and that's kind of what I came across when I discovered theater in middle school, especially in high school. Just the idea of performance is able to put your feelings out there, and that's kind of what's actually helped me deal with my, you know, problems of, you know, beating myself up and all those things, is being able to put your emotions into words and expressions, especially as it relates to how it affects other people. And it becomes more than just, it becomes more of me dealing with my own problems, but it becomes you affecting other people, teaching other people, helping other people with their own struggles as well. So I think as much as it is therapeutic for ourselves, it's also our obligation to help other people. So I think it's really important to engage in some aspect of art in general in anyone's life, whether it's performance or drawing or, you know, music. It's just really, it's not, I think one thing I would try to really focus on is it's not just for your own self, but it's helping other people too. So that's a big motivating factor.
I love the way you said that. And I think that we have, and for anybody who's watching who is interested in performance ensemble, it is different, as Tony said. It's not like being in a play per se. What has to happen, and Tony, you said this too, when you're in a play, a lot of times you're taking on a persona of a character. Here, the prerequisite is your voice. Who are you? And I'll tell you what, that can be a challenge. As we alluded to earlier, we've incorporated so many voices of authority into our consciousness. We don't recognize sometimes that we're not speaking our own voice. And that's what performance ensemble did for me. And I know that I think that's, and Fernando, do you agree that like when you see people join performance ensemble, and they're not necessarily an actor or a musician like Tony is, but they still find their voice in some cool way? I mean, I find more satisfaction in that than say someone who's already used to being a performer.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't a performer until the second I joined PE, you know. And I mean, that can mean something different for everybody, but I mean, it's just what you said, Tony, was, yeah, I cannot believe that at your age you're this wise. It's a lot of wise words.
And how you're incorporated into the show. So tell us a little bit about the show. Can we give it a plug? We want to understand,
Yes.
first of all, when what are the dates of the show?
Let me pull, I just want to make sure I get the dates completely correct, but it's next week. Just make sure.
I think Fernando and Sam might be able to help you. I think they know.
I can't.
Okay, well, Fernando knows.
Yeah.
I just want to be sure I don't get the dates completely off.
Right.
Yeah, we'll have Tony promote it.
Good.
See some performance ensemble.
Coming soon to a screen near you.
Right.
So the performance is going to be, yes, December 4th and 5th at 7 p.m. And there's going to be a Q&A to follow the final show. So I believe this will be on YouTube. And let me get, there we are. It's going to be on YouTube, and I'm super excited. I'm just saying you will be amazed at how honest and how touching these things. It will bring you to tears. It's brought me to tears, some of these performances. It's
fabulous.
Just, yeah.
So everybody write that down, December 4th and 5th, at, you said 7 o'clock, right?
At 7 p.m. Yep.
And so is there a special link to go to?
Yes, I believe they'll be providing it soon.
And we'll have it up on the page.
Got it.
For sure.
Perfect. Okay, wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like? One of the things, by the way, I just want to comment on is you saying how your team, everyone else in Performance Ensemble, helps craft what you're going to present. So again, if you're interested in Performance Ensemble, this is something that's way cool. You don't have to show up with something completely finished. Everyone's there to help one another. And Tony, the way you described and discovered how your piece could be even more powerful by altering it. First of all, as an artist, you were open to that. And secondly, you experienced how everyone wants your piece to be the best it can be. Is that correct?
No, yeah, that's definitely the kind of community that's, you know, engendered in this kind of space. You know, it's like there's as mentioned before, there's not that ego getting in the way. There's no ulterior motives. It's not like anyone's trying to do it for like fame or attention or anything. The focus is really on the message and, you know, valuing people and valuing people's voices. And that is really powerful, especially during these times where people feel abandoned, to show that their voice matters. And you'll see in the show, we have actually really what I've seen for the first time, I've really seen in any like showcase where we have different voices. We have Asian American voices, we have Black Americans, you know, Latinx voices, and all of them done in very, very honest and unique ways that are unique to them. And it's really beautiful to see, you know, in the Baha'i faith, you use the analogy that, you know, all the human race is like a garden, that all the different colors, you know, enhances the beauty of it. So it's like when you see the Performance Ensemble, you see the rose garden of, you know, humanity, all the different voices.
Wow.
Everyone needs to be valued.
Love it. And I think that, and Tony, you said this too, that if you are going to check it out, we highly recommend that you do. You're going to see that these pieces, yes, they're emanating from a very true and vulnerable place from the performers, but it's put together with you, the audience, in mind. It's not just so people can just perform for the hell of it. It's so that they can communicate. And this is what I love too about Performance Ensemble. And I will say, Tony, is also what I love about your music too. So let's segue awkwardly into what we call the big three. So I know Fernando has prepped you. So here they are, my friend, the big three. Number one, we would love to see a favorite movie or book. We know you have a book, you said so earlier. Number two, your favorite song or piece of music. Now, as a musician, I just got to pause here. That's tough.
Yeah.
You might have to give me a couple, and that's okay. And number three, your favorite quote. So far, so good?
Yep.
All right, let's go back to number one. Can you give us, please, a favorite movie or book?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I was able to grow up, you know, watching a lot of older films. So it's hard for me to pick a favorite from films per se. You know, it depends on, like, obviously, again, what you're looking for. But I'd say definitely for a book, the book that resonated most with me, as you could probably guess, is A Catcher in the Rye.
I had a feeling. You mentioned the title character a little bit earlier, so okay. Awesome. Why? Why does that book resonate? Why does it resonate so much with you personally?
Yeah, I just really felt, as I mentioned, it really identified with me reading it as a sophomore and, you know, thinking back to my time in middle school and the same struggles I was dealing with, and just how impactful that book was on society. Maybe we don't realize it too much, but it's just how I even did a paper on it last semester, how there's many elements to the book that maybe get looked over. Like I see some of my peers say, oh, it's just about, you know, like a whiny teenager complaining. But there's a lot of, it really goes back to the idea that every voice matters. And if someone is struggling, we shouldn't just cast it off saying, oh, they're just complaining. We should understand why. And in my eyes, it's the spiritual problem that everyone faces. And that he was really, you know, fed up with all the phoniness or materialism that exists in society, where people are valuing, you know, as we've mentioned, all the things of wanting to fit in, or materialistic, you know, job and money and all that stuff. So that just, I guess that always resonated with me. I always felt like that kind of, as you know, as like a musician, likes rock music and actor in theater, that kind of quote unquote rebellious kind of like, you know, kind of standing up against, you know, the status quo kind of resonated with me. And again, what the important aspect too is that it's addressing Holden's voice, but also not encouraging it as something healthy as well. In the end, it realizes that this is an experience that you can grow from, that it's not like, not everyone, that there's a way out of it. There's a way out of it towards empowerment. And so we don't have to stay, you know, unmotivated. So that's one thing. And that's just, it kind of just reflects, you know, my life experience.
I love it. Better than Cliff Notes, my friend. I love your recap. All right, number 2, and I know this will be a challenge, a favorite song or piece of music.
Yeah, so really 3 come to mind, but I'll probably just focus on maybe 1 or so. Like, I mean, growing up, in regards to music, like just pure music, we grew up on classical music, like as literally as like babies. So, you know, Gustav Holst's Jupiter is just really just a really incredible musical piece. The only reason why I mention it too is like if it's like during COVID time and you want something in the background or something very beautiful, it just has like one of the best melodies in classical music. And so I always go back to that as a way to kind of, you know, that's very soothing. And so that kind of element and focus also influences our music, you know, incorporating different time changes and different instrumentation to really just give the music a little bit of ornamentation and all that. It makes it goes a long way. So that's one influence. And then in regards to lyrics, I'd probably say Don McLean's Vincent, Starry Starry Night. Just the lyrics that are written are very poetic and very beautiful, and again deals with the idea of being misunderstood and wanting to use art as a way to, you know, touch hearts and bring people together and understanding meaning. So that was one. And then another one I'd probably say is my favorite for its lyrics is Eve of Destruction from P.F. Sloan, which was done by Barry Maguire in the 1965. And we were actually fortunate to actually meet P.F. Sloan here in the Coffee Gallery community in Altadena. And he's really one of the best songwriters ever. If you know the lyrics of Eve of Destruction, it's literally like, you know, really on the pulse of how people were feeling at the time. And I feel like that's another power that music can have, is really just reflecting the social reality of how all the fears and frustrations people were having at the time. So it's just, yeah, that's kind of where I'm going for, of what inspires like our music, you know, technically and also message wise.
Well, wow, beautiful. And I think you're right when you say, you know, to appreciate the art fully, you do need to understand the times in which they were created. And so I love how you not only appreciate it for what it is, but also in the area in which it was made. So love it. So I'm sure we're all going to be checking out those songs. And then number 3, do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, well, what's funny is I've grown up my whole life, you know, like memorizing a lot of different quotes and learning things. So one that comes to mind is one from a compilation of like short passages in the Baha'i Faith from its founder, Baha'u'llah. And the first one in these passages, called the Hidden Words, it says, and this is where, you know, the Creator is speaking to us. He says, "O son of spirit, my first counsel is this: possess a pure, kind, and radiant heart, that thine may be a sovereignty, ancient, imperishable, and everlasting."
Wow.
So it kind of puts things in perspective for me, at least my understanding of the quote is just, you know, the idea that our focus with trying to make our heart pure, and the idea of making it everlasting is trying to hold on to things that are permanent and not temporary. Because, you know, our life is, you know, very fleeting. It's over in so long. We don't want to waste our time just focusing on, as we mentioned, all the materialistic pursuits that aren't really going to fill that void inside you, you know. So focusing on those permanent things, like how to be a better person each day, focusing on helping others, and trying to improve every day, making each day better than the one before.
I hate it. No, I'm kidding. I love it. I'm loving everything. So I felt like I had to say something different, but no, dude, very cool. I mean, I think, yes, we are all, our hearts are all, and I hope audience, you feel it too, that this is something we are all striving for, to utilize our art, to connect with people, but to make a difference and spread love. So, wow, Tony, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your life journey with us today. This has been another edition of CSUN Performance Ensemble Presents In Conversation with your hosts Jefferson Denham, Fernando Martinez, and Samantha Garcia, featuring our guest Tony Licata. And we want to leave you today with one of our favorite quotes. It's from Irving Wallace, and it goes like this: "To be one's self, unafraid whether right or wrong, is more admirable than the easy cowardice of surrender to conformity." So always aspire to be your best and most authentic self. We're so glad that you tuned in today. Thank you for being with us. Stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
I will wave goodbye.